Hello and welcome. You're watching Good Morning India. I'm Gargi Rawat. Stay with us for all the news you need to start your day with. Coming up ahead, the centre sends an advisory to states on the new Omicron variant of coronavirus. Also in Karnataka, the anti-conversion bill is tabled in the assembly. All that and more coming up over the next 2 hours. Let's take a look at the headlines we're tracking. The centre has told states that Omicron is 3 times as infectious as the Delta variant and that war rooms are needed to contain it, listing a series of prevention and containment measures. Trinamool Congress leader Derek O'Brien suspended from Parliament after he allegedly threw the rule book at the chair as the election reforms bill was passed in the Rajya Sabha. The anti-conversion bill is tabled in the Karnataka Assembly amidst chaos. The Congress protests with a dramatic tearing up of the bill. The Prime Minister was in UP for a 10th time in a month for an event aimed at women. Akhilesh Yadav hits out at the use of government funds and machinery for a political rally. With Indians leading companies worldwide, HUL boss Sanjeev Mehta tells NDTV India CEOs are used to operating in chaos. Our top story now is Omicron cases in India have crossed 200. The centre issued an advisory to states warning that Omicron is 3 times as infectious as the Delta variant and that war rooms are now needed. A centre listed a series of prevention and containment measures that included extensive testing, night curfew, regulation of gatherings, including marriages and funerals. The centre also directed states to use emergency funds to increase hospital beds, ambulances, oxygen equipment and medicines. All clusters of infection should be tested for Omicron without delay. So let's take a look at the breakup of Omicron across the country. 213 cases of Omicron are currently detected. 11 more patients were found to be infected in Maharashtra. Of these, 8 patients were found through screening at the Mumbai airport and 1 has been found in Pimpri, Chinchwad, Osmanabad and Navi Mumbai. Till date, a total of 65 patients infected with the Omicron variant have been reported in the state. Out of these, 34 cases have been discharged following a negative RT-PCR test. All right, so what do we know about this Omicron variant and also how are we meant to deal with it? Here's an interview with a patient who has actually recovered from Omicron. He talks about his experience.
आप में किस तरह के सिम्टम थे या किस तरह की तकलीफ थी जब?
मुझे एक्चुअली मैं सच बताऊं तो मुझे एक भी सिम्टम नहीं आया। मुझे फ्रॉम द डेट की जब मैं टेस्ट पॉजिटिव हुआ था टू टिल दिस डेट मुझे एक भी सिम्टम नहीं आया। ना मुझे सोर थ्रोट था, ना मुझे फीवर था, कुछ भी नहीं था। मतलब अगर मेरा टेस्ट ना होता तो शायद मुझे भी पता नहीं लगता कि मैं ओमिक्रॉन वेरिएंट से जो भी कोविड पॉजिटिव था। तो अभी तक तो मैं मतलब नेगेटिव भी हो चुका हूँ, 2 बार टेस्ट भी हो गए, तो कोई सिम्टम नहीं आया। मेरी तबीयत भी एक भी बार खराब नहीं हुई। आइसोलेशन में रह के आया, क्वारंटीन में हॉस्पिटल में रह के आया। वहां पर भी कम से कम 40-45 पेशेंट थे जिसमें से शायद 30-35 को कोई सिम्टम्स नहीं थे।
ये साउथ अफ्रीका वगैरह से जो खबरें आ रही है उसमें कह रहे हैं कि सोर थ्रोट ज्यादा होगा, आपको गले में तकलीफ ज्यादा होगी, हाई डिग्री फीवर नहीं रहता है। आपको कुछ भी नहीं था?
कुछ भी नहीं सर, कुछ भी नहीं। मुझे एक भी सिम्टम नहीं था। मुझे एक दिन के लिए भी फीवर भी नहीं आया, मुझे सोर थ्रोट भी नहीं था, मुझे कुछ भी नहीं। मैंने कोई मेडिसिन भी नहीं ली, मैं सच बताऊं।
शुरू में जब डिटेक्शन हो के आपको पता चला, पहले आप पॉजिटिव हुए होंगे एयरपोर्ट पे, फिर आपको लोकनायक लेके जाएगा?
जी, मुझे एलएनजेपी
ले जाएगा। उसके बाद जब पता चला होगा कि ओमिक्रॉन है
जी,
उस वक्त का अनुभव अगर आप बताएं कि अचानक आपको ओमिक्रॉन।
सर मतलब पहले तो बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट ने बोला कि हमारे पास सिर्फ 2-3 ही लैब्स हैं जो ये देखती हैं कि ये ओमिक्रॉन वेरिएंट है कि नहीं है, तो पहले तो मुझे रेगुलर कोविड ही बोला था। 2-3 दिन बाद वो कॉन्फर्मेशन आया कि ओमिक्रॉन है, तो अब आप एलएनजे मैं 2-3 दिन होम आइसोलेशन में रहा हूँ। उसके बाद मुझे वो 2-3 दिन बाद नीचे एम्बुलेंस भेजे मेरे घर और यहाँ से मैं एलएनजेपी ट्रांसफर किया गया हूँ। तो फिर वहां पर गए, एक्सपीरियंस थोड़ा स्ट्रेसफुल ही था। मतलब एकदम से ऐसे नीचे पीसीआर आ गई 3-4, बट गवर्नमेंट ने अच्छा एक कंट्रोल करने के लिए मैं कहूंगा शायद प्लानिंग बिठाई है या जो भी बिठाई है। बट वो जैसे अभी भी आप नीचे देखेंगे मेरे घर के नीचे 4 गार्ड्स खड़े हैं अभी भी। ये 4 गार्ड्स दिन में और 4 गार्ड्स रात में अलग खड़े रहते हैं टू इंश्योर कि मैं हाउस अरेस्ट पे रहूं, मेरी फैमिली हाउस अरेस्ट पे रहे।
In other news now, the Election Laws Amendment Bill 2021 was passed in Parliament yesterday. This bill links electoral roll data with the Aadhaar card. The bill was passed amid opposition saying that it violates the fundamental right to privacy, and it was passed by a voice vote after a brief discussion. During the heated protest, Trinamool MP Derek O'Brien was suspended from Parliament for the rest of the winter session after he allegedly threw the rule book at the chair and walked out of the Rajya Sabha during protests over the election reforms bill. He will spend one day out of the Rajya Sabha as the session ends.
लेकिन आज एक दल के नेता, एक प्रमुख दल के नेता का जिस प्रकार से व्यवहार था, रूल से तो पूरी तरीके से उल्लंघन किया गया, पर एक देश में रूल ऑफ डिसेंसी है और मैं समझता हूं डिसेंसी इज द लीस्ट दैट वी कैन एक्सपेक्ट इवन अमंगस्ट ईच अदर.
See, this is what I mean by throwing the rule book. Okay, here. This is the rule book. Here. Ow. That's throwing the rule book. I did not do that. This is a throwing. I understand throwing. This is throwing. Here's the rule book. Pick it up. Throw. Listen. Mr. Modi and Mr. Shah are murdering.
Well, news now from Karnataka, where the ruling BJP introduced the anti-conversion bill. However, the bill was introduced just when Congress leaders were arriving inside the assembly after a lunch break, and then commotion ensured that over 30 minutes, and enraged by this, DK Shivkumar even tore the bill. Here's a report.
ನಮಗೆ ಇಂಟ್ರಡಕ್ಷನ್ಗೆ ವಿರೋಧ ಇದೆ ನಮ್ದು. ನಿಮ್ದ? ಹೌದು, ಇಂಟ್ರಡಕ್ಷನ್ಗೆ ವಿರೋಧ. ಇದು ಮೂಲಭೂತ ಹಕ್ಕುಗಳ ಉಲ್ಲಂಘನೆ, ಸಂವಿಧಾನದ ಉಲ್ಲಂಘನೆ.
ಅಲ್ಲ ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಒಂದ್ ನಿಮಿಷ ಹೀಗೆ ಮಾಡೋಣ. ಈ ಬಿಲ್ಲು ಅಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಈ ಬಿಲ್ಲು ಈಗ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಅದು ಸರಿ ಇದೆಯೋ ಇಲ್ಲೋ, ಹೇಗಿದೆ ಹೇಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ನೋಡ್ರಿ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ನೋಡ್ರಿ.
A controversial anti-conversion bill introduced with controversy. Even as the opposition, the Congress was just entering the assembly, catching them off guard.
ಇರ್ಬೇಕಿತ್ತು, ಯಾರು ಬೇಡ ಅಂದಿದ್ದ ನಾನು. ಫೋರಂ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಒಳಗೆ ಬಂದಿರೋದು. ಫೋರಂ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ನಾನು ಒಳಗೆ ಬಂದಿರೋದು. ನಾನು ಒಳಗೆ ಬಂದು ಅಜೆಂಡಾ ಹಾಕಿ ಬಿಲ್ ಕಾಪಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಈಗ ಆಯ್ತು, ನಾಳೆ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಬಿಲ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡೋಣ. ಈಗ ಅಶೋಕ್ ಅವರು ಹೇಳಿ, ಅತಿವೃಷ್ಟಿ ವಿಷಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಶೋಕ್ ಅವರು ಉತ್ತರ ಹೇಳಿ.
An angry Congress state president DK Shivkumar is seen tearing the bill on the floor of the House. The law minister, however, claims no procedure has been violated. The bill, modelled on bills passed by other BJP-run states like UP, lays down stringent conditions for conversion, including sweeping definition of illegal conversion, force, employment, allurement, or marriage. Burden of proof that conversion is not illegal lays solely on the person doing the conversion. Person carrying out conversion needs to declare 30 days in advance to district magistrate. Convertees will lose reservation status. Harsher penalties for converting those from SC/ST communities. Penalties ranging from jail terms of 3 to 10 years. It comes at a time when the Christians in Karnataka have faced a string of attacks, which the community fears will worsen once the bill is passed.
Type of inducements that you are trying to say, perhaps the force that you are taking, it is going to be a little messy affair for the government, first of all, to pinpoint and say, but everyone can accuse. Everyone can be considered as criminal. Ultimately, this anti-conversion law is not only anti-Christian law, it is making the Christians, especially the converts, criminals as it were.
At first, the BJP transferred a government officer who debunked the anti-conversion claims. And today, the ruling party went ahead and introduced anti-conversion bill in the absence of the Congress. While the Congress questions the BJP as to what is there to hide, the Christian community says the harsh penalties that range from 3 to 10 years of jail term, now that is a law which gives a free hand to attack and also victimize the Christian community. In Bengaluru, with camera person Kumar, Shrija for NDTV.
Indian CEOs are leading companies globally. The new FICCI president, Sanjeev Mehta, the chairman and managing director of Hindustan Unilever Limited, talks to NDTV about it, says Indian CEOs are used to operating in chaos.
Mr. Mehta, we're seeing the rise of the global Indian CEO, in fact, even one from the global Unilever families, now the Chanel CEO and so many other tech companies.
Oh, absolutely. We are so proud of Leena Nair. Yeah, she's done an absolutely amazing job. Another quality product of Hindustan Unilever.
And what is it about the Indian CEO that makes them all heading so many now companies globally as well?
Yeah, it's, I think it's an age of Indian managers. First is, we are people who are taught to navigate the rough and tumble of Indian chaos.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a very important trait. And remember, I was talking to you about sense making. Indians intuitively get into sense making. The second is, India is multicultural. Yeah. Before this job in HUL, I was chairman of Unilever North Africa, Middle East. And I used to run 20 countries, from Oman in the east to Morocco in the west. And the 29 states of India are more heterogeneous than the 20 countries of Middle East. Because there it is one predominant culture, one predominant religion, one predominant language. Here we are so different. Palate is different, culture is different, tastes are different, beauty quotient is different, language is different. So we are able to navigate the multicultural world very well. Then the third important bit is Indians' ethos of hard work, integrity, is values, keeping the company above self. All those things are coming into play in a very big way. And last but not the least, I think empathy, which is now becoming a big thing in the Western world, that also comes naturally to an Indian person. So compassion, empathy, that comes in very naturally, because we live in a country where there is huge amount of paradox, and our culture teaches us to do that. And so those are the traits where helping the Indian managers succeed in the global world.
In other news, under the new delimitation scheme, government announced 6 new seats for Jammu, 1 for Kashmir, leading to a huge political fight with the opposition, alleging that this will deepen the divide between Jammu and Kashmir, questioning the rationale of this move despite the fact that Kashmir has a higher population than Jammu.
A united opposition to the proposed new move to give extra seats to the Jammu region. The Gupkar Alliance of Jammu and Kashmir's lead opposition parties says the move will worsen divisions between Hindu-dominated Jammu and Muslim-dominated Kashmir.
Constitutional frame है delimitation के लिए भी, और जिसमें सेंसस ही एक बुनियाद बन सकती है, आबादी उसको इग्नोर किया गया। दूरियां पैदा करने का एक कदम है। कम्युनिटीज के अंदर जो पहले ही शक शुबात है उनको बढ़ाने की गरज से है।
According to the plan, the number of seats in BJP-dominated Jammu will jump from 37 to 43, while in Kashmir, where the BJP is weaker, it will only increase from 46 to 47, closing the gap between Jammu and Kashmir from 9 seats to just 4 seats. The Gupkar parties are questioning this increase, arguing that the basis of the exercise, the 2011 census, shows Kashmir having a much higher population than Jammu. According to the census 2011, the population in Kashmir is 68 lakh against 53 lakh in Jammu province. But the BJP now questions the credibility of the 2011 census.
In the earlier stages, this delimitation commission was controlled by the state government only. So they were manipulating it. They were manipulating the census reports also. This time it's a fair exercise. Moreover, the reservation given to the STs, it's a very welcome step.
The Commission has justified increasing seats in Jammu, saying it's taken other factors into consideration like giving more seats to vast, thinly populated, far-flung regions close to the Pakistan border.
But the larger question is, if the template to increase seats is not just population but size and proximity to border, then states like Rajasthan may demand a higher number of seats. In Srinagar, Nazir Masoodi for NDTV.
With that, time for a break. Coming up on the other side, the battle for Uttar Pradesh. Welcome back. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in UP yet again on Tuesday, this time at a government function in Prayagraj, attended by around 2 lakh plus women. The Prime Minister gave 1,000 crore worth cash payouts to women under different schemes, and up in UP, 6.5 crore women voters have been actively wooed by the Congress as well. But questions again raised on the blatant use of a government platform for political ends. Akhilesh Yadav too hit out over this.
किसने ध्यान रखा है? देश के प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने
A BJP MP openly campaigning for votes with the Prime Minister on stage at an Uttar Pradesh government event in Prayagraj. Prime Minister Modi launched the transfer of 1,000 crore rupees of central funds to women-run self-help groups across UP. Rupees 4,000 have been transferred as the first month's stipend to 20,000 women banking correspondents under a UP government scheme. The Prime Minister also released 20 crore rupees to 15,000 girl children under a separate state government scheme. As his government introduced the controversial bill raising the marriage age of women from 18 to 21 in Parliament, the Prime Minister attacked the Samajwadi Party for protesting this.
बेटियों भी चाहती थी कि उन्हें उनकी पढ़ाई लिखाई के लिए आगे पढ़ने के लिए समय मिले, बराबर अवसर मिले, इसलिए बेटियों के लिए शादी की उम्र को 21 साल करने का प्रयास किया जा रहा है। लेकिन किसको इससे तकलीफ हो रही है, ये सब देख रहे हैं। माता बहनों बेटियों ने ठान लिया है, अब वो पहले की सरकारों वाला दौर वापस नहीं आने देगी.
This was the Prime Minister's 10th day in Uttar Pradesh in just the last month, and elections have not even been announced yet. Samajwadi Party chief Akhilesh Yadav, campaigning in Mainpuri, took this Sarkari rally jibe at the Prime Minister.
लेकिन भारतीय जनता पार्टी की रैली जनता की रैली नहीं होती, वो सरकारी रैली होती है, सरकारी के खर्च में. अभी रैली होने जा रही है एक उनकी इलाहाबाद में. सुनने में आया कि मैनपुरी से भी सरकारी बसें लेकर के गई हैं महिलाओं को.
Priyanka Gandhi Vadra questioned the Prime Minister's timing, saying it came after her poll promises to women a 40% quota of election tickets, stipends and two-wheelers for girl students.
मुझे ये कहना है, उत्तर प्रदेश की महिलाओं, मैंने आपसे क्या कहा था? अपनी शक्ति को पहचानो. आज आपकी शक्ति के सामने इस देश के प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी झुक रहे हैं. 5 सालों से क्यों नहीं की ये घोषणाएं? छोड़िए, मेरे बच्चों के इंस्टाग्राम के अकाउंट भी हैक कर रहे हैं.
The UP government claims the event was attended by over 2 lakh women who were brought in from across UP in government buses or those organized by the government. The battle for UP's 6.5 crore women voters is intensifying. With Nitin Gupta in Prayagraj and Vineet Verma, this is Alok Pandey, NDTV.
Welcome back. Now, as Omicron cases in India have crossed 200, Centre has issued an advisory to states warning that Omicron is 3 times as infectious as the Delta and war rooms are needed to contain it. The Centre also listed a series of prevention and containment measures that included extensive testing, night curfew, regulation of gatherings including marriages and funerals. The Centre has also directed states to use emergency funds to increase hospital beds, ambulances, oxygen equipment and medicines. All clusters of infections should be tested for Omicron without delay. So currently there are 213 known cases of Omicron in the country. 11 more patients were found in Maharashtra. Of these, 8 were found through screening at the Mumbai airport. Until date, a total of 65 patients infected with Omicron variant have been reported in Maharashtra, and of these, 34 cases have also been discharged following a negative RT-PCR test. Now, the Omicron variant is the dominant strain in a host of countries, including the US, Denmark, Portugal and the UK. The World Health Organization's top official in Europe has warned a storm is coming and that a surge of Omicron cases will push European health systems towards the brink. To talk more about this situation and what we know about this new variant, we're now joined by Dr. Fahim Yunus, Chief of Infectious Diseases, University of Maryland. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us on the program. Now, there's more and more news of Omicron spreading. It's the holiday season as well with Christmas and New Year's. What is your advice to people?
Yeah, my advice will be that the pandemic is very difficult to predict at this stage, just like stock market. You can't predict the stock market, but still all of us invest, or most of us still believe and invest in the stock market because we believe in certain principles. So similarly, there are certain principles of this pandemic which are important to keep you safe. And those principles are remain vaccinated, wear a high quality mask, and avoid gatherings where you feel there are high-risk people, and particularly if you're immunocompromised, then take extra care. But the life cannot come to a stop anymore. I don't think going back into lockdowns is a solution.
All right, so lockdowns is not the solution, but we are seeing some restrictions coming back in countries. We have travel bans in place. Countries are being placed on the red lists.
I don't think travel bans work anymore. Once again, 2020 March was different. It was a new virus. We did not have a vaccine. We did not have a treatment. We did not even have the knowledge. So today, almost 2 years into it, look at what we achieved with these travel bans, Gargi. Right now, Omicron is already present in more than 90 countries, and I think it's probably in another 50 countries if we test it enough. So we have to figure out safe ways and keep the messaging simple. And just because it's a new variant, we don't have to come up with a new strategy every time. We need to implement our old strategy better.
And now it's being said that Omicron causes milder illness. It doesn't mean it can't have long-term effects, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I gave you the example of stock market. It's very difficult right now. There are so many variables that the results in one country could be different to another country. The result in one population, in one group of people, in one individual could be different based on so many variables have been introduced. Long COVID, to me, is still a big gray area. Good quality research has to happen. We need to agree on specific definitions. We need to do more case-controlled, peer-review trials. And with time, we will see long-term infections and long-term effects are known for every virus, nothing unique to COVID. But I just don't like to go to either extremes of that narrative. I'm not dismissive of long COVID, but I also think that it can be hyped up too much. So I'm avoiding both of those extremes and not trying to scare people from something that we just don't understand today as well.
Right, Dr. Yunus, there's also, news coming from the United States that monoclonal antibody treatment, something that was, found very promising, that it's not working against Omicron.
Sure, multiple monoclonal antibodies have been a good addition to our armamentarium, and 2 of them at present seem to have lost their efficacy to a great deal. That is true. At the same time, we feel our vaccines are effective. We feel it still remains a respiratory virus. And I'll tell you, there are 400 or 500 people in my immediate circle in the city where I live, 98%, 99% of them are vaccinated. Almost all of them are following the masks and the guidelines, and I haven't seen any one of them getting infected through the Delta wave or the Omicron wave right now. Of course, this is my own personal experience, but what I'm trying to emphasize is that the same principles are working against this variant that they're working previously against Delta and other variants.
All right, you spoke about, vaccines and how they're working in India. We're yet to start a booster program for the vaccines. There's a lot of concern about that. There's a lot of clamor for it. But at the same time, we haven't been able to vaccinate a majority of our population either.
I know, very difficult decision. Every country has their own challenge. They have their own, it's very difficult, very easy actually for me to comment here from America as to what India should do. I personally think this is a difficult decision. I won't get into the policy. The science is pretty clear though, Gargi. The science is that the current state, Omicron will pierce through the 2 vaccine strategy. People will get more breakthrough infections, and if they have immunocompromised illnesses, that they will end up in a hospital. We know that for sure. A 3rd dose will help rebuild that immunity, will improve protection. Now, how do you distribute it in a country like India with that scale where you still don't have nearly, even not even near 70 or 80% vaccination? So that those strategic, difficult questions, I will leave it up to the locals to decide. But the science is pretty clear.
All right. Well, thanks for that. And also, should vaccinating teenagers be a big priority? We haven't started that here either.
Right. So when it comes to children, there are a few things we know and some we don't. As far as children under the age of 5, their risk of hospitalization or death has not actually been higher than previous flu seasons here in America, which is extremely reassuring. I think international data also supports that the risk to children, thank God, has not been more. So I'm less worried about that small population. I think schools, I agree with a lot of experts. They should be the last to close and first to open. We adults have to get our act together, and our children don't have to suffer for our mistakes.
Doctor, so finally, what do we know about the severity of the disease called by Omicron? There's so many different studies claiming different things. Some claim it's as severe as Delta. Some claim it's milder than Delta. So what do we know?
So we know that the transmissibility is high. We know that it is doubling from 1.5 to 3 days in multiple countries. As far as severity is concerned, we are still, I'm one of those who feel it is not more severe than Delta, but I'm reading the same studies that you're quoting. I don't think we have enough long-term good quality data. What we do have is a very clear decoupling. You can all go on Google right now and find out the number of cases in Denmark and the number of deaths in Denmark, the number of cases in UK and the number of deaths in South Africa. And you'll clearly see in previous waves, as the number of cases rose up, the deaths followed. That's not happening this time. Number 2, these peaks are not lasting as long. They're actually dropping pretty quickly. All of that is good. I don't want people to become complacent though, because what may be happening that this time the hospitalizations will increase, even if it does not cause death. By the sheer number of new cases, it can overload the systems, where you don't want to be in that same crisis situation again, where we can't find oxygen for people. And understand that resources in a hospital are used by all the people in the community, not just COVID. We don't want to see people dying of a heart attack on the street because the hospital was full. And those are the things that I'm worried about, that overload of the hospitals, but I'm not as worried about the severity of this Omicron as of today. Of course, things can change.
Right, that is the challenge, overloading hospitals and people with other diseases getting neglected. So it's very worrying for us currently, watching what's happening in the United States and the UK, and there are fears that there could be a wave here early next year.
Yeah, there's nothing good about Omicron or COVID spreading. So no one should think that there's anything good about it. But in terms of US, I just again want to reassure people, unfortunately, in US there are 2 different pandemics. One is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. That's what's fueling all the numbers. I work on the front line. 70-80% of all our patients are still unvaccinated. The other 10-20% who are vaccinated were either old or had cancer or were on immunosuppressive drugs or had underlying conditions to explain it. The vaccinated people are largely protected. So I cannot emphasize this point enough that what we are, and I believe every media story should lead with that data point. Anytime we're talking of a curve, we should talk about what percentage was vaccinated versus unvaccinated. Because we have to give reassurance to those people who are following the science, who are doing everything right, who are otherwise healthy, and we cannot paralyze them with this broad narrative, broad brush narrative. Cases will continue to go up, but I think there is clear dichotomy on the ground that people like me on the front line are seeing. And that to me is a reassuring for at least all those people who are doing the right thing.
All right, Dr. Yunus, thank you so much for speaking to us here at NDTV. Well, to talk more about the risk from the new variant Omicron, we're now joined on the program with Dr. Ravi Godse, MD Physician, Director of Discharge Planning, UPMC Shadyside, who's visiting currently in India. Dr. Abdul Samad Ansal, Director Critical Care Services, Nanavati Super Speciality Hospital, Mumbai, and Dr. Sameer Gupta, Cardiologist, Metro Group of Hospitals, Delhi. Thank you so much, doctors, for joining us on the program this morning. Dr. Ravi Godse, first to you, looking at the situation around the world, especially in the US and in Europe, it's very, very worrying here in India. Now we have this, circular sent out to all the states. Karnataka already announcing measures on cancelling New Year celebrations.
I don't think it's worrying at all for India. There's not going to be a third wave. Omicron will turn out to be a big nothing, nonsense. These top 5 countries that you're showing right now, one country is missing from that. Do you know which one? South Africa. That's where it's all supposed to have begun, right? South Africa had 976 cases, then 8,114, maybe because of less reporting on Sunday. But the cases have now already crashed down to 15,000. The wave has come and gone. Omicron wave is not going to be like this. It is going to be like this. So the problem is, when it touches the peak, there could be a problem and it catch a lot of vulnerable people. South Africa resembles India more, lot of natural disease, and we have way more vaccination than them. We have 40% of the adults fully vaccinated, 2 doses. If India starts the boosters now and vaccinates the kids, anyway, India is okay. I stake my reputation on it. There's not going to be a Omicron third wave. You can take it to the bank.
All right, well, that's very interesting. I mean, given what we're seeing around the world and while, yes, in South Africa, I think it's already started waning. It's on the decline. The worry is that given our sheer numbers, whether we're going to see, a situation of health services being overwhelmed. Dr. Abdul Samad, your view of this and, what and the centers already sounded the alarm to the states, asking them to set up war rooms and, start monitoring clusters, especially right now.
Yeah, good morning. I completely agree on the one hand that we need to be very careful and we can be overcautious in our approach towards run-up of this so-called Omicron third wave. And there is a good sign that it may actually kind of plateau off early. But still, as you rightly said, the increasing numbers in a short span of time can overwhelm, strain healthcare systems. Especially, a fatigue has also set in. But there are better options now. People are more aware now and people are reporting early. Government has learned the lessons and we are kind of tracing contacts very aggressively. And I think cluster outbreaks need to be really looked very closely. And I think where we are lagging is we are not really sharing our genome sequencing results to really understand what is the spread pattern. And having more information will definitely make us more wiser. Extra caution is definitely advisable with a population of our size. But I think I agree with Dr. Godse that we may probably not see the same kind of impact like in the second wave. So let's keep our fingers crossed, move ahead.
No, absolutely. We're hoping we won't see that same impact. But again, we know that it doesn't show many symptoms. It's something that can move through the population. In fact, one of the interviews we just had was of a person who, only realized at the airport that he even had the virus and that it was Omicron and he felt absolutely nothing. Dr. Sameer Gupta, your view on the situation currently?
It's pretty interesting as to what is happening across the world. It's become, Omicron has definitely become the dominant strain in many parts of the world. If you look at the US, for example, right now 73% of all cases are Omicron, and they're definitely seeing a spike. A similar situation has happened across the world. So it's good to be proactive than reactive. We are taking, the government is, and all the healthcare authorities are recognizing the potential impact of the strain. Now, we do also know that this virus has an immune escape mechanism. With 2 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine that we have in India, there is the immunity significantly drops. So we really have to start planning a roadmap for the booster. We are also seeing other things, that the monoclonal antibody is not very effective against this variant, which is also something of concern, because we always thought we have that in our armamentarium as a fail-safe mechanism, that if somebody does get infected, we can use the monoclonal antibodies and significantly reduce the symptoms. As far as the third wave coming on, I'm a little cautious. I'm personally a little cautious to say that there will be no spike or something of that sort, because what we saw in South Africa was, like Dr. Godse said, it just went up, it just shot up overnight. In 2 weeks, it's 73% of all cases are coming with Omicron. Yes, the vaccination does offer some benefit, but it is not as tremendous as we thought it is. The good news is that just this morning, the Walter Reed Medical Center has come out with a new vaccine, which is going to be against all the different COVID variants. And when that is actually rolled out, it will be a few months. So, there is some hope on the horizon, but it's not immediate horizon.
Right, we are waiting for more vaccines. Dr. Ravi Godse, you spoke about boosters, but right now there is no plan. The government not talking about boosters, even though there's been a clamor for that. And, reinfection with Omicron is the big worry, and immunity is waning. We started our program early this year, and for those vulnerable population, the elderly, they received it early in the year, so already their immunity must be very low.
Well, I think you all say all the plans to stop the virus. Testing, tracing, isolation. You should know what you can do and you cannot do. Don't try for the moon. It's impossible. We couldn't stop Delta. This is 6 times Delta. If you're going to trace and isolate a bus conductor in Delhi, the 3,000 people that he issued to, the whole nation will be in isolation and quarantine in 1 day. Economy will be in the tank. We cannot stop Omicron. We cannot stop it. It will turn out to be India's booster and Africa's vaccine on the cheap. We don't want more cases. We cannot. How can we stop it? If it is 6 times Delta, how are you going to trace and isolate how many people? 100, that's how. All those efforts need to be spent on finding out those who need monoclonal antibodies or the drug. So rather than increasing testing, President Biden wants to offer 500 million testing for 300 million Americans. What are you going to do? If Titanic hits the iceberg, don't keep measuring the iceberg, find a lifeboat. What are you going to achieve by doing more testing? If there are 50 people, if in Mahabharata, Kunti Mata is coughing and you are testing Pandavas because they are traveling, test Kunti Mata. If she tests positive, give her the monoclonal antibodies, move on. Stop doing asymptomatic testing. Report only hospitalization. Start the boosters for people who want it. Boosters will help you reduce the mild COVID and will help you spread it to the others. England has already given 43% of the boosters.
That
Mainland
we need,
China,
even the WHO's, top official in Europe, even though the WHO has overall said that we want to, have vaccines available to more parts of the world rather than rich countries boosting their population. But the WHO head in Europe just said, boost. That's what he's saying. And clearly that has to be a way of protecting the population. Dr. Abdul Samad, so really, do you feel, all of us here, health experts and the news channels, etc., need to put more pressure on the government to at least announce some sort of a plan on the booster front?
I had previously also spoken about, I think I will first go by vaccine equity, and that's what is our first focus. And vulnerable population we really need to identify, where booster can be definitely initiated simultaneously. But rather than going on a booster wave for all, I really don't know whether we have the wherewithal and the resources, but vaccine equity comes as a priority. And I would still stick to that we need to ensure that vaccine equity is there first, and simultaneously the most vulnerable population should be considered for early booster initiation.
Because that does seem the fear that, those who are vulnerable, those who are immune compromised, healthcare workers like yourself, they're the ones who need to be protected right now. And hopefully this Omicron variant will remain a mild infection. Dr. Samir Gupta, your view?
Yeah, absolutely. For example, healthcare workers like myself, we were given our initial dose of the first 2 doses of the COVID vaccine in the second part of January. And we got our, at that time, the break was of 4 weeks. So we got a second shot by the middle of February. Now, it's been almost 9 months since that we got our vaccine. And we do know that the vaccine immunity that you get from COVID, it goes down over a period of time. In fact, with the Omicron variant, in lab studies, they have shown it's only 5.5% is the efficacy after 2 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine. And however, if you do get a booster, your immunity goes back up to 71 or 75%, somewhere in that range. So I think it's about time we really start thinking of the booster, because once the hospitalizations go up, right? The hospitalizations will go up with Omicron. That's what we're seeing across the world, whether it's for the vaccinated or the unvaccinated. The healthcare workers are going to be the people who are going to be in the forefront, and the essential workers will be at the forefront. So we really need to start protecting these people, because if we get infected and now we are in quarantine, the healthcare staff is there's a shortfall of healthcare staff. So we really need to start thinking of
All right, I'll give the final word to Dr. Godse, who seems to have, a different view on this worry over Omicron. Yes, go ahead.
It's nothing. Only test symptomatic people. Boosters should be given in a heterologous prime boost. Means 2 doses of Covishield, give them Covaxin. 2 doses of Covaxin, give them Covishield. Bring mRNA. If you are running a TV show, so you already have a very good, kind, smart anchor, Gargi. You don't need another anchor. Get another technical person. So if you have taken 2 doses of Covishield, bring a vaccine that will boost your immunity. Start the boosters voluntarily. No third wave. India is fine. Nothing to worry about.
Well, that depends on whether we do get the boosters and get more vaccines in our kitty. Thank you so much, doctors, for joining us this morning on the program with your views.